My daughter handed me a cup of hot chocolate, smiling sweetly. The smell was strange, so I didn't drink it. Quietly, I switched cups with her husband. 20 minutes later, the screams began in the kitchen. But before we continue, if you haven't subscribed yet, do so to stay up to date with the most shocking and real stories happening around you. It started with a smell, a faint, bitter scent that rose from the cup of hot chocolate my daughter had just placed in front of me. I had known that smell once, long ago, back in my years as an accountant, when a client had died of cyanide poisoning. Bitter almonds. The scent clung to the steam, almost invisible but unforgettable. "Drink it while it's hot, Mom," Rachel said, her voice soft and honeyed, the same way she had spoken to me since she was a child. She smiled, but something in her eyes didn't match. The warmth of her tone, they were cold, steady, almost waiting. I lifted the cup to my lips, pretending to take a sip. Then I set it down and reached for the sugar jar. "I'll just add a little more sweetness," I said, my voice steady despite the storm building in my chest. As Rachel turned toward the sink, I switched the cups, mine with the one belonging to her husband, Ethan. He had stepped away to answer the phone moments before. It was a small, instinctive movement, the kind that only comes from a lifetime of reading, details and balancing ledgers. Something in me knew when Ethan returned. He smiled at Rachel, kissed her cheek, and took the seat beside her. "Smells great," he said, lifting the mug. She leaned her chin into her palm and watched him drink. 20 minutes later, the first scream shattered the quiet of the house. I found Ethan on the kitchen floor, his body convulsing, his face pale, foam forming at his mouth, his hands clawed at the air as if trying to grab something invisible. Rachel knelt beside him, screaming, "Ethan, Ethan, please." Her voice echoed with panic, but her tears never came. I grabbed the phone and called 911, my hands trembling so hard I almost dropped it. "My son-in-law. He's not breathing. Please hurry." I could hear my own pulse in my ears like a drum of disbelief as the dispatcher asked for details. I watched Rachel press her hands to Ethan's chest, her cries growing louder, more desperate. Yet through that noise, my mind began connecting details, tiny logical pieces that refused to be silence. Ed. Why had she insisted I drink the hot chocolate right away? Why had she made 3 cups when she knew Ethan never drank it in the afternoon? And why, as she knelt beside her dying husband, did I still see that glint of calculation in her eyes? The paramedics arrived within minutes. That felt like hours. They worked over Ethan while Rachel clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder. "Mom, he's dying. Please do something." For a moment I wanted to believe the performance. I wanted to believe that the girl I had loved for 30 years was incapable of such cruelty. But deep down I already knew. The bitter scent, the steady gaze, the cold precision. It all added up as they loaded Ethan into the ambulance. I followed in my car, my mind racing through 3 decades of memories that now looked different under the harsh light of suspicion. That was the moment I realized the unthinkable. My daughter might have tried to kill me. As the ambulance lights faded ahead of me, my mind went backward instead of forward. Every mile I drove behind, that flashing red glow peeled back another layer of memory. Memories that once felt warm and now tasted like ashes. Rachel had come into my life 30 years earlier, when I was 37 and nearly out of hope. My husband, Paul, had died in a car accident 2 years before, and the doctors had told me children were no longer possible. Adoption had been the only dream left standing, after everything else had fallen apart. When the social worker brought Rachel to my door, she was a tiny 5-year-old girl with pale blonde hair and a small stuffed rabbit. Missing one ear, she barely spoke. She looked at me with those big blue eyes, frightened, lost, desperate for safety. I knelt down and whispered, "Hi, sweetheart. I'm Eleanor. I'm your new mom." She just stared for a moment before placing her small hand on my cheek. "Mommy," she said softly. I cried that night, certain that love had finally returned to my life. The first few months were peaceful. Rachel was polite, affectionate, almost too perfect, but then small. Strange things began to happen. My cat Daisy died suddenly. The vet said she had eaten something toxic. A few weeks later, all the fish in my aquarium were floating dead. One morning then, a neighbour's dog was found poisoned. Each time, Rachel cried harder than anyone else, sobbing over the cat, writing a little goodbye note for the fish, hugging me with trembling arms. I told myself it was coincidence, trauma, a child trying to adjust. I told myself what every lonely, hopeful mother tells herself when the truth is too painful to face. By the time she turned 10, Rachel had mastered the art of charm. Teachers adored her, neighbours praised her manners, but at home I started to notice her lies small, deliberate and told with a calm that chilled me. If money disappeared from my purse, she would swear she hadn't touched it, her expression steady, unflinching. Once she accused a classmate of bullying her, only for the teacher to later tell me Rachel had been the one tormenting others. Still, I forgave everything. I thought I was healing a broken child. I thought patience and love could fix anything. I gave her everything: school, therapy, time, safety. But as I followed the ambulance that night, one thought echoed louder than the sirens. Maybe I hadn't been healing Rachel. Maybe I had been protecting something far darker. When we arrived at the hospital, chaos swallowed the emergency room. Doctors rushed Ethan onto a stretcher, nurses calling codes I didn't understand. Rachel ran beside them, crying out his name, her voice raw and theatrical. I followed quietly, gripping my purse so hard my knuckles turned white. A nurse stopped me at the doorway. "Mum, please wait here." So I stood in the hallway, the smell of antiseptic sharp in the air, listening to the sounds of machines, the metallic clang of instruments, the rhythm of panic. Every sense screamed that something was terribly wrong, not just with Ethan, but with everything I thought I knew about my life. Minutes later, a doctor approached. "Are you family?" "Yes," Rachel said. Instantly, wiping her eyes. "I'm his wife. This is my mother." The doctor hesitated, studying both of us. "Your husband's condition is critical. We found strong signs of poisoning. Do you know if he's been exposed to any chemicals?" Poisoning. Rachel's voice broke perfectly on cue. Oh my God. "No, how could that happen?" My stomach clenched. The doctor continued. "We detected a scent of bitter almonds on his breath that often indicates cyanide." Rachel's face drained of colour, but her reaction felt practiced, too precise, too timed. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. "He drank hot chocolate," I said quietly. "My daughter prepared it." The doctor's eyes flicked toward Rachel. "Who prepared it?" Rachel turned toward me, stunned. "Mum, what are you saying? You think I would ever—" "I'm just answering the question," I said softly. The doctor nodded and scribbled notes. "We'll have to run toxicology tests. Please bring any of the remaining drink if possible," Rachel quickly offered. "I'll go get the mugs." But I shook my head before she could move. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady for the first time in hours. "I'll handle it myself." Rachel froze, the corner of her mouth twitching just slightly, a flash of something I had never seen in her face before. In that moment, I realized this was no misunderstanding. This was a performance she had rehearsed for years, and I, for 3 decades, had been her audience. That night, Rachel insisted I stay over. "Please, Mom, I can't be alone after what happened," she said, her voice trembling as she poured another cup of tea. What if whoever did this comes back? The thought of sleeping under her roof made my skin crawl, but I agreed. Not because I trusted her, but because I needed to know the truth. After midnight, when the house grew still, I slipped out of bed. The moonlight cut through the blinds, painting silver lines across the hallway. Rachel's room was quiet. I could hear the slow rhythm of her breathing. In the kitchen, I began my search. The counter was spotless, the mugs washed and placed neatly in the rack too neat in the back of the pantry. Behind a row of unused spices, I found a small glass jar without a label. Inside was a fine white powder. I unscrewed the lid and sniffed. The same unmistakable smell of bitter almonds filled my nose. Cyanide. I placed the jar in my purse and kept searching. In a drawer beneath the stack of dish towels, I discovered a small insulin syringe and a folded piece of paper. On it was Rachel's handwriting. Increased dosage. "She's starting to notice cocoa is the best delivery." My heart stopped. I I crept into the study she shared with Ethan. The room was filled with neatly organized folders, financial records, and computer files. I switched on the small desk lamp. Among the papers, a folder caught my eye, its label written in bold marker. Mom Final Plan. Inside were photocopies of my will, my insurance policy, and my bank statements. Record she should never have had. I skimmed through the pages until I found one that froze me. Accelerate timeline lethal dose in hot chocolate. Blame Ethan. A noise startled me, a creak from the hallway. I shut off the lamp and held my breath. Her footsteps approached slowly, pausing outside the door. Then silence. I waited until I heard her moving back toward her room. When I turned the lamp back on, I noticed another file, this one tucked deep inside the drawer. It was filled with death certificates. 2 husbands, both dead, before the age of 40, both natural causes, and at the bottom of diary, page after page describing dosages, symptoms, and dates precise, emotionless records of each man's death. By the time I returned to my room, my hands were shaking. I tucked the jar and the diary into my bag and sat on the bed staring into the dark. The girl I had raised, loved, and defended for 30 years was not a victim of trauma. She was a predator, and I had been her next target. At sunrise, I stepped quietly into the backyard, with my phone pressed against my chest. The air was still damp, the sky pale pink. My hands trembled as I dialed Detective Hayes's number from the card she had given me at the hospital. "Detective Hayes," she answered. "It's Eleanor Pierce," I whispered. "I found something you need to come right away." "What kind of something?" "Proof the poison, and evidence she's killed before." There was a long silence on the line. "Maya, are you sure I'm looking at her handwriting, her plans, her victims?" Hayes's tone changed instantly. Steady, professional. "All right, Mrs. Pierce, stay calm. We'll send a patrol car within the hour. It'll look like a routine follow-up visit." "Do not confront her." I thanked her and hung up. My heart was pounding so loudly it almost drowned out the birds when I went back inside. Rachel was at the kitchen counter, humming softly while spreading jam on toast, as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, Mom," she said brightly. "Did you sleep?" "Not much, and I've been thinking," she continued. "Maybe we should hire a private investigator to find out who poisoned Ethan. We can't just trust the police." Her tone was calm, deliberate. "She was testing me, I think," I said slowly. "The police are doing just fine." The doorbell rang. Rachel flinched, then forced a smile that must be them now. 2 uniformed officers stood on the porch, with Detective Hayes. "Good morning, Mrs. Pierce." Hayes said pleasantly, "We'd like to ask a few more questions." Rachel stepped forward, trying to stay composed. "Of course, anything you need." As they entered the living room, Hayes turned to me suddenly. "Do you have the evidence?" I handed her my bag inside with a jar of cyanide, the diary, and the forged documents. She glanced through the pages quickly, her face tightening. Minutes later, I watched from the doorway as the officers led Rachel out in handcuffs. She didn't resist. She didn't cry. She just looked at me with those same calm, ice-blue eyes and whispered, "You shouldn't have looked, Mom." For the first time, I didn't look away. 3 weeks later, Detective Hayes called Mrs. Pierce. "Your daughter wants to see you," she said carefully. "She claims she has something important to explain." I hesitated. Every part of me screamed not to go, but a quieter voice whispered that I needed closure. I needed to look the truth in the eye one last time. The county jail was a grey block of concrete that smelled of bleach and despair. Inside the visiting room, Rachel sat at a metal table. Her wrists cuffed, her orange jumpsuit neatly pressed. Her hair was pulled back tightly, and she smiled as if we were meeting for Sunday brunch. "Mom," she said softly, her tone syrupy sweet. "Thank you for coming." I didn't answer. I sat across from her, waiting. "I just want to explain," she continued. "Everything you found, it looks bad, I know, but it's not what you think. I never wanted to hurt you. I was protecting you. Protecting me," I repeated quietly. "Yes," she said quickly. "Ethan was dangerous. He was trying to poison me, Mom. I only wanted to stop him first." Her eyes shimmered. Her voice trembled. It was a performance polished over decades, but something inside me had changed. The spell no longer worked. "Rachel," I said calmly, "I read your diaries." For a fraction of a second, her mask cracked. Then she smiled again. Colder this time, then. "You know I'm smarter than everyone thought. You killed those men," I whispered. "You planned to kill me." She leaned forward, her voice suddenly sharp. "Do you want the truth?" "Mom, you were just an experiment. I wanted to see how long a woman could love a monster before she noticed. My breath caught. You called it motherhood," she said. "I called it control." "Why?" I asked. "I gave you everything: a home, safety, love." She tilted her head, her expression empty. "You gave me what I needed: money, respectability, and identity, but love. I don't believe in that. People like you do." I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Then I guess we were never family," I said. Her smile widened, cruel and bright. "Oh, we were, Mum. You were the perfect mother for a sociopath." I turned toward the door. "Goodbye, Rachel." "Mom," she called after me. "You'll regret turning on me. I always finish what I start." I didn't look back. For 30 years I had been afraid of losing her. Now I was finally free of her. The trial began 3 months later. In the county courthouse, reporters filled the hallway, whispering Rachel's name like it was a legend. "The Poison Widow," one headline read. I sat in the front row, hands folded, my heart steady. I wasn't there as her mother anymore. I was there as a witness. The prosecution presented her diaries, the cyanide, the insurance documents, all in her handwriting. Every page was like a knife. Rachel sat still, expressionless, her eyes darting across the courtroom, as if studying her next move. When Ethan took the stand, his voice trembled. She told me she'd perfected ways to kill without leaving a trace. When I tried to leave, she said she'd kill Eleanor next. The jury listened in stunned silence. His words stripped away any doubt that might have remained. When my turn came, I spoke quietly but clearly. For 30 years, I thought I was a mother. I was wrong. I was a shield she hid behind. My voice didn't shake. Rachel doesn't feel remorse. She feels strategy. The defense tried to argue mental illness, claiming Rachel's childhood trauma drove her actions. But her own words betrayed her. Pages of cold clinical planning doses, dates, and bank calculations. No insanity, just control. The jury deliberated for 4 hours when the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. Rachel didn't flinch. She looked at me and smiled faintly, as if to say, "You still lost." But she was wrong. For the first time in 3 decades, I had won something more valuable than forgiveness: freedom. 5 years later, I woke up to birdsong instead of sirens. The air outside my window smelled of pine and rain. I had moved to Asheville, North Carolina, a small house surrounded by hills, sunlight, and silence. It was the kind of place I once dreamed of retiring to, back when life still made sense. Ethan lived nearby, just a few blocks away. After the trial, we had become family in a way blood could never define. He had survived Rachel's poison, but not without scars together. We built new life from the ashes of the old one. 2 years later, he adopted 2 siblings, a boy and a girl from a local shelter. Their names were Noah and Lily. I became Grandma Ellie. Some days when I watch them playing in the yard, I think about Rachel, not with anger anymore, but with a quiet understanding of what she could never feel peace. I started a foundation that helps adoptive families recognize emotional manipulation early. We teach parents how to see the signs, how to balance love with awareness. It's called the Clear Heart Project. Every time a family tells me they avoided disaster because of something we taught, I feel a small piece of healing. One afternoon, I received a letter from the women's prison in Ohio. The handwriting was Rachel's. She said she had found religion, that she was sorry that she wanted me to visit. I stared at the letter for a long time before placing it in the fireplace. Some doors don't need to reopen. That night, I sat outside, watching the stars with Noah and Lily beside me. Grandma Lily asked, "Do bad people ever become good?" I took her hand. "Some try." I said, "But some just pretend. That's why we must learn to tell the difference." When they went to bed, I stayed on the porch, listening to the wind move through the trees. I realized I no longer felt haunted. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't always love. Sometimes it's letting go completely, so that your own heart can breathe again. If you've made it this far, it isn't just about betrayal or justice. It's about awareness. About learning that love should never silence instinct. That sometimes protecting your peace means letting go of someone you once called family. Thank you for watching this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly value every story and every voice. Don't forget to subscribe to Tears and Strength and share this video with your friends.